Can you turn any sound into any other sound? Question mark. It's something I've heard a lot, and there was a time when I had no idea what that actually meant. I think there's definitely some truth in it, and there is some stretched truth in it, and there is also some things about that statement that is probably not right, depending on how you look at it. I would argue that it is difficult to take the recording of someone speaking and turning that into something sounding like exactly like a Steinway grand piano, or that you take the sound of static electricity and turn that into something that sounds exactly like an opera singer. So in that sense, I don't think that is true. But I think there is some truth in it that you can take almost any sound and turn it into any type of sound. And that's what we're going to look at in this video. And hopefully it will give you some creative ideas, unless you have done things like this before. So back in Ableton 11, I have grabbed a piece of sound from a YouTube video. I don't know if you're familiar with Bob Ross, those old school videos of the guy with the big curly hair painting landscape pictures. So here is a little clip that we are going to be basing all the sounds on today.
Now then, tell you what, I like doing those trees. Let's do another one. Back into my dark color with a fan brush. Load a lot of color. Let's go up here. Maybe there lives in our world a bigger evergreen here.
So there we go. Imagine that this is the only source of sound that you can work with, and then you can add effects or manipulate it to turn it into lots of different things. So we're going to look at a few different techniques. So if we start off with, I've got an empty track here, so let's add a sampler. The quick and easy thing is that you can turn this into an oscillator. So if we just drag that sample in there, let's turn that channel off. So now I can play this across the keyboard.
Now then.
Arguably tricky to turn that into a melody, but you can turn this into an oscillator now. So let's say that we want to loop this sound. We can do a back and forth loop. And then let's just make a super tight little area here. So you just get a tone.
With a fan brush.
This doesn't matter how where you Okay, so we already got a tone there, and then you can obviously set. And then you can shape that sound into whatever you want. And of course, if you want to find a different, how do we change where the loop starts and ends? I just want all those linked. Does that work? Can I do that now? No. And obviously, the tighter the loop, the higher pitch it will be. We've got like a harpsichord type sound there, I suppose. My pet hate instrument. And then what do I want to do? Yes, of course. So this is not going to be in any particular pitch now. So to be able to make this work with other instruments, it could be a good idea to go into utilities and audio effects and add a tuner. So and then we can just adjust this to do a C3 maybe. C anyway. Pitch that up a bit. So now that should be in tune with all, you can remove that one, and then that should be in tune with all your other instruments. You can probably make some nice pads out of it. That was some really horrid chords, but that's nice too. And then you can still play around with it. You may need to retune it, so okay, let's go back. So we got that pad sound, but then, for example, if you want to make something percussive, you can obviously change this envelope. But it could also be good to go into this section where you can set a pitch envelope as well. So you change the pitch over time. So we go in here, and then we can set how much we want. Quite horrid sound. The other thing, that's some sort of percussion, and then we can use this bit as well, which is interesting, which is frequency modulation, and that is a long explanation in itself. But imagine that you take the original sound. Actually, let's turn that off just to explain that concept. We turn off the loop so we can just hear him speak again. Actually, that's not a half bad sound. That's quite a good snare drum. So I'm just going to keep that for now because we're going to do something later. So we do, it should be a nice copy of that. So we set the start sound, and then we turn pitch envelope is off. We turn off the transpose again, and we which
Now then, tell you what, I like doing.
Okay, so we got him back there again. So just to explain, I'm not going to go into detail what the FM does, but if we click on there on the pitch oscillator, that there is a separate oscillator that can, so you have the original sample, and then you can have something like a sine wave or a square wave that affects the original sample. So it takes and screws up the original waveform rather than playing alongside. So just change the volume on that one a bit.
Now then.
So if I take that and infuse a bit of sine wave into this.
Now then.
So that's another way you can create a, so let's make another percussive sound actually while we're at this. So we want this to start a bit later, I think. So we want, maybe make a bit of a hi-hat. So filter is another good thing with. Okay, so we've got a hi-hat sound. Maybe we'll try to make a little bit of a track at the end, or not an entire track, but a little loop or something. It could be interesting. So that's obviously a few techniques you can do. And if you want something that is a bit more bassy, you don't necessarily think that he's got a very, it's not very sort of bass heavy sample. Let's add another sampler in, and we drag that in again. Solo that track. And let's find
color with the fan color.
So we just make a loop again.
Color.
So let's see what pitch that is. So we do the tuner again. Seems like a bit of a difficulty picking that up, but okay, so let's do that into, so we need a bass sound here. So we do pitching that correctly, and then we want to pitch that. Let's make just a basic little bass line. I am not the bassline guru. How does that sound? Let's see. We need a bit more tempo to start with. Maybe we want to do just. Do you know what? That is a pretty poor bass line, but let's go with that anyway. See if we can. Where has it gone? Where have you gone, you cheeky little notes? So actually, if I do, how we do that? So we probably want to have a bit of envelope on the filter as well. And basses usually want to be in mono, I think. Well, I sort of know that that's what they usually are, because bass don't work that well in stereo. So we need to go into audio effects, and we have a utility, and we just set that to mono. Gosh, that is a really boring bass line, isn't it? Still not that bassy, so let's see. Let's just add some EQing. See. Maybe we can add a bass amp. Drive. Drum bus. What do we want to do? Actually, maybe a drum bus. Now we got some real low end there. So we've create a bass sound out of Bob Ross, some sort of snare and a hi-hat. We probably need some sort of kick, but we are going to look at more sounds we can do first. So we leave that one in, just turn that off. Other things you can do with this sound is actually to go in and you take the wavetable synth. As you know here, in this area, you can choose, as you may know, you might not know, I don't know. You can set the waveforms, and it allows you to scroll through them, and there's a whole bank full of sounds. But with this one, you can actually we can take Bob Ross and scrub through Bob Ross instead. That's a bit weird, but hello, what's going on? No, that's not what I wanted to do. There are you. That's what I want to do. So now we've got Bob Ross here. It's impossible to hear it anymore. But it's quite a cool effect. So if we would do our Bob Ross wavetable. Actually, let's see what pitch that is. I don't know if we are going to be possible. There's probably going to be all sorts of pitches in there depending on where you're scrubbing through. But if we can just have a look and see. Look at that. Maybe that's how it works. Maybe this just like locks it to a pitch. Clever, if that's what it does. So you could do something where you take, let's just create something fairly rhythmical. We just do it that long, and we can do some long ones. Actually, we do them with 2 in between. Just putting some random ones out. Let's do some triplet 8 notes in there as well for good measure. And then we can loop that. No, set it to loop. Loop. Come on, there we are. Boom. And then we can use something like the expressions control, the MIDI effect, and we do the random, and we use the random one there, and then we map that to, so every time a note is pressed, it will pick a different part of the wavetable. We're also going to set that to mono, because then otherwise you can get multiple sounds playing next to each other, but that will force it to stop the sound, like, so you can't play chords basically. And just for the sake of argument, let's add random, and then we do that to the return chunk, send it off to the reverb perhaps. Did that do that? Random, another random there, boom. That sounds like a mess. Do we want to do that behind? The first that is just a bit too hectic, maybe. Is that too high? Maybe we want to pitch that down an octave. Maybe that's better, yeah. And then we can take that one down an octave. It's important, that thing, we talked about it in the previous video. Was it the previous one? I don't know. Like, where try to avoid to overlap frequencies. You can obviously go out in and do a lot more cutting and things with EQ and stuff. We're not going to do that in this video, but maybe that loop is a bit short, so we can maybe do 2 of those, and we actually do gap there, and then we can do fine. I don't know if that improved anything. Okay, so we've got a Bob Ross bass and a Bob Ross you can also make interesting rhythmical things with a sound source like this one. So if we take a simpler this time. Before I do this, I just want to mention that these techniques that we've just used, you can pretty much use any sound. Like if you have a kick drum or hi-hat, whatever else it is, you can apply these techniques and you're going to get a really different result depending on the sound you use. So it's an interesting way of getting a really unique sounding oscillator. What I'm going to show you now, you need a sound with a lot of, what should we call it? We can't really call it rhythmical content, but a lot of variation. This would not work that well on something like a hi-hat or a kick or a pad sound or something. You will need to have more differences with transients and things. And so I'm going to show you.
Now then.
That's the right pitch. So in simpler, you can do something that you can't quite do in the same way as in the sampler. That's that slice button here. And by default, it's set to slice by transient. So it looks at where the peaks are, and then it just makes, what are they called? I don't know what these things are called. Slices, I suppose. You click the slice button. And then it maps them across the keyboard. So it allows you to make, well, it's not a drum kit, but you can make a sort of a percussive kit out of this. So let's solo this channel. And what I'm going to use for this is something that I've used in most of my videos. I'm just going to use the Mono Sequencer, which is a free sequencer you can download. As per usual, I'll put a link in the description. Currently it's only playing the same note, and it's a 16-step sequencer, so it's just triggering the middle C, I think. But here you can go in and but there's also a random button. You can obviously go in and set the notes manually, but use the random button. How random do you want it to be? Boom. And down here you can set which steps are. And you can make, so you see here, if they're blue, the sound will play. If they're not blue, if they're black, then we'll skip that step. And you can make that loop, so that's 16 steps, and that's now 13 steps, so you just get a bit of variation. Another thing that you can do with this is that you can pitch it down. No, sorry, you stretch it. So click on 8 bars, and then we can set how many bars this is stretched over. So if you click times 2, at the moment, you can choose how you want to time stretch this. It's by default set to beats, and to allow you to stretch the sample to longer, it's sort of ping pong looping the little segments. This is going to sound way more robotic if you set that to just looping forward. It says that to fade out, and then you just, now we've got like a little percussive loop going, and then we can change the transposition a bit. Oh no, actually, let's try, rather than beats, texture is an interesting one. Sadly, these ones you can't MIDI map. I hope Ableton will fix that in the future. I suppose it's very niche interest. And then we can we change the duration of these? That's like the length of the notes to... And then there's this nice repeat thing. So when it gets to a step, it repeats. If we set this to be... Get the idea? Flux is a little bit like anti-aliasing with photographs. I don't know if you've played around with that. It sort of adds smoothing it out a bit, but it can sound very digital as in artifacts, and it depends on if it's a sound that you're going for. Let's try beats again. Okay, let's say that's interesting. We can play around with this a bit more actually. So we can do, let's group that one. So we got two of the same going. Let's just solo one of them, and then we take another one of these expression controls, and then for every note we use the random and we map that to the filter frequency, and we set that to have a little bit of a glide. And the other one, stop. Okay, there we are. And then we can, for this one, we are just gonna add some metallic echoes to this by adding the echo effect after the top one. So we got two of the same samples, one that has the filter modulation, and then this one, which we're going to put a high pass filter on because we don't want the bass. Set that to time. Go and turn repitch off, because otherwise if you turn these knobs, they're just it just goes slightly too psychedelic for my taste, but you can play around with that if that's a sound that you like, let's say. And then we add another random to the time. Let's mix that with the Okay, let's turn that channel off for now. There was actually one more thing that I was going to show you in the sampler, which is I'm not going to go into great detail because someone called Ned Rush, I don't know if you know of his videos, I'll put a link in the description, has done an excellent video on this already just the other week. So I'm going to link to that because he's going to explain it in much more detail and he's going to push much further using this technique. I also have to say that I didn't actually watch the video. I only listened to it because I was doing something else at the time. So I think this is what he is doing, but he might have done something slightly different. Okay, so we got the sampler again. So let's see if I can play some notes.
Now then.
Okay, we got him back there. You can use, and you might have seen in my other videos, I'm using loads of LFOs and Max for Live devices to control a lot of the parameters in devices. But there are some controls that it doesn't allow you to map to, which is a shame. I don't really know why. But you can use the built-in modulation matrix here for that. And that's what we're going to look at now. So first, I'm just going to have a little envelope with a bit of a longer release.
Now then, tell you what, I like doing those trees.
Tell you what, I like doing those trees. Let's do another one.
So it's got a bit of a tail now. So every time I let go of a key, it sort of plays on. So we can create a bit of a sort of granular cloud effect. So you know, if you're going to sample, there is the start of the sample here.
Yeah, nose metal. Back into those trees. Like what? Back into my dark colors.
Now I'm changing that manually. You sadly cannot map that parameter using LFOs, but you can do that through the modulation matrix. It's got 3 LFOs, low frequency oscillators. The first one you can map to these 4 predefined parameters. These 2, LFO 2 and 3, you can map to, you have more choices. So basically here you can choose to map it to the sample offset, for example. That's the starting point of the sample. What you can do here, if you do type and you choose that one, the sample and hold, the more random one, and you turn off retrigger. If you have retrigger on, I think you will always get the same sample and hold. Correct me if I'm wrong. So every time I press a key, it will not re-trigger this waveform. It will just pick another waveform. And then we're going to up this to max. So now every time I press a key, it's going to start at a different point in the sample. So you can get interesting glitchy effects like that. And this is an interesting technique. You can actually use this to let's make a pad actually. So if we take, if we just do the same thing where we set a super tight loop point here. Okay, we've turned that into an oscillator, and then we go in here, and rather than mapping that to sample offset, we can set the loop starting point, I think. To create interesting effects, or we can change the loop length maybe. Get interesting. Let's make that loop a bit bigger actually. So tight. Oh, what's going on? I can't even see what's happening. So then we can set that to the loop length, and then we can also set the loop start. We can, and then sample offset maybe. We can use the other oscillator here. We can maybe have a different waveform for that. Actually, that one, if we change that to Loop length might not be such a good idea in the end, because obviously the tighter the loop is, the higher the pitch the sound is going to be. Anyway, that's an interesting effect to play around with. This actually, quite like this metallic sound that we got out of this one. Sounds quite gritty. But we need to see what pitch that is in so we can get some sound. Let's see there. Not too far off, but we need to. And a little bit of reverb on that maybe to get a nice lush pad. It's a bit quiet. So let's create some drums. So we had this one. Actually, could we, just for simplicity, let's create a new MIDI track and we create drum rack where we can drag those instruments in. Now I'm gonna plug a few things while I'm here and speaking to you, and I'm just gonna set up this drum rack anyway. Come on there. If you like what I do and feel inspired and feel that you're able to sponsor me, please consider sponsoring me on Patreon. I put a link in the description. If you do, you will be able to download lots of stuff from previous videos, but for this one, I'm going to share this project file with you so you can maybe deconstruct the techniques I've been using, or like, actually, if you use this technique, a quick thing to do, so you can take my track and you can just drop your own samples into, just replacing the Bob Ross waveform with whatever you have, and it will just sound very, very different, and you can play around. It's a quick technique to actually just do some sound exploration. Just remember that you may need to go and retune the samples. So we got that, that's the hi-hat sound and a snare sound. So we're gonna need one more sound. We're gonna need a kick. So let's do another sampler, and hey Bob Ross, let's get some kicks going. We can keep those as individual tracks if you want to. Gosh, get too Shouldn't be just listening to stuff like that. I should be making stuff for you guys. Okay, where can we find a kick? I bet you we can turn that into a kick. So let's try and the kick should be not polyphonic, and then we can use that envelope to pitch it down. That's obviously too high, so we can actually I quite like that sound. We can keep that for something else. So I'm just copying that. Oh gosh, come on. Copying that. So there's too much high frequency in there, so we're going to have a bit of that is an extremely thin kick. It doesn't sound like a kick to me. We need some more oomph in there. What can we do? Can we do we want to use overdrive, maybe? Amp? Bass roundup, what does that preset do? Let's look at what that waveform does. So if we take an EQ8 and see, maybe drum bus. Drum bus solves everything sometimes. Drive, where is that? There's the drum bus. We want maybe a bit of saturation, so we get, because a lot of stuff in a kick is happening in the transients, even though you think of it as a really bassy thing, but what slaps or hits is in the transients. There are some frequencies in there that I am not a big fan of. Where are they living? Maybe we need to pitch it down actually a little bit more. Am I feeling it? Not necessarily. That's better somehow. Let's try that, and then let's just make a quick beat here. And then for a bit of variation, we can click on that one. No, not on that one. That one, where we can set the chance for each note to play, and we probably want the first one to play and this one, say those ones are quite no, that was the velocity, but quite unlikely. That one is quite likely. That one is quite unlikely. That one is definitely. These ones are, can actually do these ones just, but there's some chance there. So where do we have the snare now? Is that? So where do we want to have a snare? There, maybe, and is that the hi-hat? So the hi-hat, we put them on all the 16th notes, but we change the chance for all of them. Chance. For this one, we can also put in an expressions control. So every time it plays, we use the. I need to get out of the habit of using this, but it's just so damn good. We use the random again, and then we set a random decay, which is probably always going to be quite short. So we set the maximum to be quite short, but it's never going to be nothing. Oh gosh, that was the kick I just did that to, I think. What did I just do? Oh, I see. This is the one I want to put an expression control on. Just while I'm doing this, I'm just thinking, is there anything else we can do regarding the sounds? And I've just thought about something, and I hope we'll be able to fit in. And then we have that other weird sound that we fitted in somewhere. So let's just chuck a drum bass on this now, on this whole drum rack. Let's see, we can bring some other elements in. Not that.
Tell you what, I like doing those trees. Let's do another one. Back into my dark color with a fan brush.
did something to turn down the volume on this. What did I just do? Turn that off. We don't need it. Got a little bit of an IDM thing going. So I don't know what you think. In a way, yes, you can use any sample to create any type of sound, I would say, and the more you tweak that sound, you can get something really, really unique and different. So now we got sounds that no one else would have been using. Just listen to that loop again. Actually, you've heard it, but just let's listen to that original sample again. Well, it's going to be pitched up now.
Now then, tell you what, I like doing those trees. Let's do another one.
Well, not pitched up, but it's going to be a bit stretched because we increased the tempo there, I think. Or had I already set it to that tempo? I don't know.
Now then, tell you what, I like doing those trees. Let's do another one. Back into my dark color with a fan brush. Load a lot of color.
There we are. What I could do is actually set that not to warp, and then we'll get to the proper speed.
Now then, tell you what, I like doing those trees. Let's do another one. Back into my dark color with a fan brush. Load a lot of color. Let's go up here. Maybe the...
Apologies if I actually played that at the weird speed at the beginning. I can't remember anyway. Okay, I hope you enjoy this. Please let me know if you have any feedback or any ideas or comments or things that you would like to see me doing. And please consider sponsoring me on Patreon. That would mean so much. I got a few announcements to make. I'm currently working on an album that's going to be released on the label Point Source. It's going to be released in August, providing that I will be able to finish it. I'm at the point where I'm sort of 90% done, but I also feel like I got 90% to go, because to get the arrangement into a good place is one thing, but then actually tweaking and changing all the little details in the end just always take way longer than you think. I'm also about to move house, which I will be doing during the first week of August. There's going to be a lot of stuff to do and to set up, but I'm still going to make an attempt to do a weekly post for you. Probably be a little bit of Ableton focus as per usual, but I do hope that when I get going again, that I will, for the first time in my life, have a dedicated space for doing music. I've never had that before. I will be able to set up my hardware stuff again. It's going to feel like I got brand new equipment, because I've actually not been able to use any of it pretty much since before Christmas, apart from the little Arturia microfiche that I got here. But otherwise, gonna get back into it, and from there on I probably want to do a bit of a mix. It's going to be, Ableton is my DAW of choice, but it's going to be more modular stuff, some vintage stuff maybe. I'm also in the process of being able to film that more properly than I've done in the past. I'm also in the process of buying a camera, and currently I am leaning towards the Sony A7C. If you have any comments on that, please share, because I'm about to get it. And my reasoning for getting that one is they're currently doing a great deal on that here in the UK. I have a background of doing a bit of still photography, which I still want to do. I lost my camera sadly a good few years ago. This one, looking at specifications, are fairly similar to the Canon camera that I had when it comes to still photographs. It's not that much difference, but the form factor is a lot smaller. I've looked at loads of reviews, and it feels like the price that I can get this for is something that I can just about afford, and it feels like it's going to do a lot of the things I need this camera to do. The big thing is, like, I got a couple of Canon lenses that I had from when I lost my camera, Canon camera, but the lenses are still there and they're very good. Whether I should go and get a good adapter for it or if I should sell them and buy some native Sony lenses, I don't know. I also need to learn more about video making because I used to do way more just still photography. So that will be another side of things. But I do hope that later this year there will be more varied videos, more interesting sounds, and I also want to look at, for people who have a background in, let's say, Ableton, they're really worried about the modular side of things to look at, because there is actually a lot of similarities depending on how you look at it, because I think Ableton has changed the way how I use the modular synthesizer, and definitely the other way around. So I'm using a lot of these videos that you have seen me doing like this sort of stem from more of a modular workflow, and I'm going to talk more about that to help people transition between both of them, or if you feel like there's something that you enjoy doing in Ableton but you don't know how to do it on the modular, and vice versa, that looking at some of those things. So adventure time ahead. I'm going to be super busy, but I hope I will be able to create some great content for you, so please hang in there. Thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you again next week. Bye.